Welcome everybody to another SI UK update on how COVID-19 is affecting the university sector. I'm Aki Hanabusa and I'm here with our operations director, Guy Darty. Hi Guy!
Hi, Aki. I'm loving what you've done to the office.
It's lovely and tropical.
It is, isn't
Okay, so we are also delighted that today we've also got Andy Howells from Universities UK International, Daniel Kaff from University of East London, and Dr. Farhan Moradi from University of Westminster. Guy, it's obviously rapidly changing and confusing situation for international students. Can you give us an update on what the current situation is?
Yeah, certainly. And that's why these updates are so important.
Indeed,
So
yeah.
I'm delighted to be able to do that and to have our friends from various institutions to help us with that.
Mhm.
First of all, though, let's have a quick look at the familiar images of this pandemic, including, of course, an image of lectures taking place by Zoom there, which I think any current student will be very, very familiar with.
Mhm.
Now, we think things are changing quite dramatically now and will be changing quite dramatically very soon. And we're pretty optimistic about what's going to be happening for the September intake. And that's not just me saying it. For instance, the British Council at its recent virtual conference was saying that it was expecting a large increase in international student applications this year, also expecting some of those applications to be a bit later than normal and take a bit longer than normal because of the current situation, but we'll come to that shortly. However, what is the current situation? Well, of course, since January, the UK has been in a lockdown. The universities have kept going as they've kept going throughout, but it's been a bit tougher since January. So we'll all be very pleased when this is over, which, as I say, we fully anticipate to start happening quite shortly. But the current situation, I think the key things are now, since January, most courses are delivered online. Through March and through the September that was just gone, there was a mixture of online and face-to-face, blended learning. But for most courses now, they're delivered entirely online. The exception being health, education, social work, and one or two niche other programs. But those three big areas are still able to be delivered face to face because it's a requirement of their professional bodies, and it makes no sense not to be able to do it. But most courses have been online since January. However, both the government and the universities recognise that for some students, although they've advised them to enrol online and travel to the UK only when face-to-face teaching recommences, for some students, they've already booked very expensive plane flights and it's not possible to change them. Or there are some visa reasons why they need to come right now. And for those students, they say, well, fair enough, the universities, the place you're going will look after you. And we'll hear a little more about that from Daniel from University of East London in due course. But for those students, they should bear in mind that even though they can travel to the UK and they will be welcomed and looked after, they're going to have to take a test. Um, I did 72 hours or sooner before their travel, and they must obviously test negative, no point in testing positive. And then when they get here, they'll either have to self-isolate or quarantine for 10 days, taking other tests to make sure that they're COVID negative. The universities will look after you, but if you're in that situation, make sure you contact either the university you're going to, or if, for instance, you're working with SI UK, contact us and our consultants will help you to make sure that you know exactly what is going to happen. But as I say, currently, and in fact, in 2 days' time on Monday, Boris Johnson is due to set out a roadmap, and the rules are going to be changing.
I see. Okay, so things are changing, you say, but why is that, and what's actually happening?
Well, like I say, this has been a global peak. The peak was actually a second peak of the pandemic. The peak globally, actually, as well as the UK, was on the 8th of January. We can even pin down the date as accurately as that. But cases are declining quite rapidly now. And in the UK in particular, vaccinations are going at an incredible rate. You know, now we have vaccinated over 24% of the adults in this country, including 90% of all those who are in vulnerable categories. Those two things together mean that we can start to talk about cautiously and sensibly easing the lockdown process. And so we expect that to take place quite quickly. But it is very complicated. And so I talked to Andy Howells, who is a Vice Director of External Affairs for Universities of UK International, and they represent all the universities in this country in their discussions about these issues and international students generally. And I spoke to him about what the current situation was like and what he expects to see in the immediate short term.
I mean, first of all, I'd say that some face-to-face teaching is happening in the UK. I believe for medicine and dentistry and subjects allied to that. I think, probably being very honest, it's going to be difficult to predict what will happen in the coming months. But what I would point out is that I think we can take really good and great confidence really from UK government response to international students during the pandemic to date. I think the UK has remained open to international students whilst other destinations have closed their borders. And as you point out, the UK is vaccinating its population at a ferocious pace, really, which is another really positive sign. And I should also point out that there are international students who register with a GP in the UK will be eligible for the vaccination. I mean, I've been an international student myself, and you know, we fully recognise that this situation is not ideal for anyone. I think we know current international students are missing out on some elements of the experience that they would normally get. And whilst universities are absolutely doing all they can to replicate as much of that as they can virtually right now, I think we're all hopeful that greater in-person teaching and socializing will become more and more possible.
Okay, it sounds like things are gradually moving towards the new normal. But another area about which we've been having lots of questions is around the measures universities have been taking to keep students safe on campus. Guy?
Yes, that's obviously primary issue of concern to international students and the primary issue of concern to universities. Looking after their students on campus is obviously top priority, so important to all the universities. And it's really interesting to see and very reassuring to see exactly what the universities have been doing in this regard. So I spoke to Dan Cuff, who's the head of international office of University of East London, to get an insight into the sort of things that they've been doing to look after their students.
So what we tried to do was to look at this holistically and look at the full student journey from departing to arriving in the UK, to how they begin their studies and any other kind of pitfalls that may arise because of the pandemic. If we look at the very front end, we introduced a range of quarantine packages that the students can book online, and that means they are met from the airport when they arrive from their journey from wherever it is in the world they're traveling from, picked up in a private car hire, dropped off at the campus, inducted into their accommodation. And then this is a 2-week quarantine package, 3 hot meals per day, full wellbeing visits by a residential life team. And also enables them to access, you know, the digital platforms they need to begin that enrollment process, and, you know, in make sure that they're enrolled onto their program proper. So around the campus, we're very conscious of the need for social distancing. So there's plenty of signage around to indicate how many students are allowed in a classroom at any given time. Very well social distancing spacing within the library and IT suite facilities and around the canteen areas. So we've taken this very seriously, as we need to be, because I think with any university in the UK, the safety and well-being of their student community should be at the very, very centre of all of their thoughts and plans.
Oh, wow. They really have got health and safety of students at the heart of their activity, haven't they?
Front and center, as they say.
Looking forward, of course, this program will be sold by vaccines, I suppose. A lot of students have been asking whether they will be eligible to get the vaccine or will have to pay in the UK.
Well, yes, they'll be eligible, and no, they won't have to pay. Let me say a little bit more about that. Obviously, international students pay a health surcharge, but that includes everything for the NHS, so it gives them a great deal of reassurance. And what happens is that as soon as an international student comes here, they register with their doctors or their health service on campus, for instance, if that's where their nearest health service is, and they will get fitted into the priority list for vaccination. The UK aims to have all adults vaccinated, well, ideally well before the autumn. We've already done 24% of the nation so far, 24% of adults so far, so we're really going very, very quickly. International students will fit in just like any other adult citizen of the UK. They won't be put to the bottom of the queue. They will be judged like any other adult. We have a strict list of order of vaccination. So, for instance, Aki, I'm going to get my vaccination well ahead of you. Do you know why that is?
Age, I suppose.
Exactly, age. The other main thing is underlying health conditions. It's not that, but yes, because I'm older, I get vaccinated earlier. And it's the same for international students, and no, they won't have to pay. They'll just get vaccinated. So it's really important that international students know that they won't have to take additional measures, that they will get it through the NHS.
Oh, fantastic. At least we get something out from our health surcharge.
Oh, don't be like that. You know, we're very proud of the NHS in this country, and it's genuinely a very good thing for international students.
It is. Okay, so the next area we get lots of questions about is how students are actually taught at the moment. I wish I had shared in Zoom.
And it's not just like that either. It's a lot more complicated than that. But I have to say that UK universities have really been at the forefront of remote delivery, distance learning for many, many years now. And most universities, if not all, had a virtual learning environment built and operational well before this pandemic. But obviously what's happened since March is that this has become more and more important as the central part of delivery. So it involves, yes, Zoom and lectures on Zoom, but also packages like Blackboard, which provide a whole virtual learning environment for the students.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so actually I spoke to my former professor or a lecturer, Dr. Faham Moradi from University of Westminster. And then we explored some of the challenges that he has found that students are facing.
When it comes to teaching, I think students had certain expectations that they are going to have a tangible relationship with their learning. The tangible relation is the building. Forget about what may happen in the classroom. In the classroom, certain things may happen. And I have to say, you know, when the student, for me, I'm not saying this, it's not about necessarily teaching the students in the classroom. But I think for me, it's when the students in the classroom, if I can make them think, I've done what I have to do. That's my purpose. I'm not there to inject tons of ideas into their head. I'm there to make sure that they can start thinking, questioning things. So there are other things that is involved in the students' mind and body, and the whole thing were removed. They have to get used to certain things that they were not imagining that this can happen. And of course, that can turn into certain images. These images could be negative, and sometimes it may not be very good. I'm thinking about those students who are living in 2 rooms in a block of flats with their brothers and sisters. How are they going to manage the situation, the condition that they are given? They felt, I mean, when they were coming to university, they felt they were free from the space that it wasn't easy for them to manage. And that freedom were taken away from them. And not only that, but also, do they have the right computer, right Wi-Fi? Can they sit in a room and talk to listen to the lecturers? What if their brothers and sisters does something funny? How are they going to manage all those things? It's not easy. It's difficult. But we have to understand it from the other end, not just me, but also the university, the student services, whoever is there, that they can give them that support. And I felt that we have to build a community.
Okay, that's really interesting. We can see how lecturers and students have really been working together, sort of collaboratively, to make the most of the opportunities presented by this sort of new virtual learning environment.
Yes, exactly. So asked Dr. Maradi how he's feeling about the potential going forward.
I'm very excited and optimistic. And I think excited because we have explored different ways of teaching, different ways of learning. Excited because I see that the potential exists in both learners and the teachers.
Yes,
that potential that we can push it in a different way. And excited because the boundaries will not be as rigid as it was in the past. I think it will shift, and the opportunities, I think, will be greater, hopefully, for those who haven't got access to the kind of education that we have always seen as the best. They wouldn't think that is something extraordinary. It's something that it's no longer extraordinary. It's normal for us to live the way we are, and we have to be positive about it.
Oh, incredible to see how they adapted their courses to maintain students' engagement and interactions and academic values of the UK higher education, isn't it?
Yes, it is, isn't it? I share Dr. Maradi's excitement about all this, actually, and I think that as we come out of the pandemic, we'll find that many of the techniques that they've used over the last year are actually become core parts of UK higher education going forward. And I'm very interested, for instance, in our own field here, in the fact that students can enroll before coming to the UK. I think that might give a little bit more flexibility in the future in terms of, for instance, if there are queues at IELTS centres or visa authorities are particularly busy in a certain place, that it might make that easier. I really hope that we continue with that.
Okay, right. Of course, this leads us to another main area where we receive questions, which is application and visas. Yes, some of the questions are really individual and technical. We have a visa advice service, and generally students should seek advice on individual cases. But here is few common questions. So the first question is related to application. Have university application and acceptance processes changed because of COVID-19?
Well, they certainly did in September, and again in the current the current intake, the sort of January to March intake, the universities needed to be and were a lot more flexible about things. For instance, accepting more English language qualifications than just IELTS, because they recognized that the IELTS centres were closed. And also in terms of deadlines and in terms of looking at alternatives where their exams had been cancelled in a country. However, we are looking at getting more back to normal for September. And so we're not aware yet of the universities being quite as flexible. They do have to maintain academic standards after all. Yes. But I think the best thing with that is that you keep in contact either with your admissions department at the university, or hopefully if you're using our service that you keep in contact with us, because we are very up to date on exactly what is happening in each of the universities.
Exactly. So once students get an offer, next step is visa application. So the next question is, if the student is unable to travel to the UK to study, will they still be eligible to apply for the graduate immigration route, which is known as PSW?
PSW, yes, and we heard Andy talking about that earlier, and what a big thing that is for UK, the reintroduction of PSW. The basic thing here is that, again, the UK government has been flexible about this and recognised that many students have been required to study online. So it's quite complicated. But for instance, if a student started a postgraduate programme in September, then as long as they're able to do their last semester of that programme in the UK, they'll still be eligible. So that's as long as they can come to the UK. At present, it says for the 6th of April to do the last semester, then they'll still be eligible for that route. If a student is looking to start right now on a master's programme, between the January and March intakes, for instance, then again, even if they start online and therefore study in their own country, as long as they complete the final semester in this country, they'll still be eligible to apply for the graduate immigration route. And for most of the people who are watching this are probably thinking of September intakes, there should be no problem at all for those students. And they should still remain eligible to apply for the graduate immigration route, the PSW route.
Great, a great change. So yes. Another question related to visa is, will students be able to secure their Tier 4, now it's a student route visa, if they are outside of their home country and unable to return home?
Oh, thank goodness you've asked me an easy one. Yes. That's
the answer. Yes, it's the answer.
Yes, exactly. Again, the UKVI recognises the particular difficulties for students at this time. And so if they are outside their home country, where normally they'd have to return home, but the UK government accepts that where the pandemic has made that impossible, that they won't be disadvantaged. So yes.
Great. Thanks, Guy. Very informative. So how do you see the situation is developing over the next 6 months or even longer?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I'm in line here with the British Council, who are looking at international applications for the 21-22 year for the UK and noticing that they are considerably up. So I think things can only get better. The UK government recognises just how important the university sector is to this country. We've seen that, for instance, in all the research and the tremendous involvement and impact the UK universities have had in terms of helping the world actually to solve the problem through, for instance, the Oxford vaccine. Sorry, the Oxford vaccine. But to get a view that encapsulates the universities as a whole, I went back to Andy Howells and asked him what he thought the future held for UK higher education.
We recognise, I've been an international student myself. We recognise, how big and important the decision is choosing where to study in effect. And I think I'd start by reiterating the earlier points. The UK has remained open to international students throughout the pandemic. But I think what it's also done is it's really demonstrated how much it cares for, how much it supports its international students here. And I think there were insights published in December which showed that international students who chose to start their studies in the UK in 2020 during the pandemic were more satisfied across a number of areas, including support provided to them during the pandemic, than international students in other destinations, such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, etc. And I think the UK remains as welcoming as ever for international students. There's a highly professional infrastructure in place in the UK to make sure that international students are well looked after, compared to perhaps perceptions of maybe less well-oiled approaches in other study destinations. And on top of that, we have the graduate routes coming in from September 2021, where international students completing degrees will be able to benefit from 2 years work experience, 3 years for PhD graduates in the UK upon graduation. I think there was a survey of more than 16,000 international graduates back in 2019, which showed that 83% of them said their UK degree helped them get their current job, which is a fantastic.
That is really positive prospect for the future from September onwards. So we are going to go from this to this.
Hallelujah. Yes, full lecture theatres once again. Well, certainly hope so. I'm sure there's going to be some social distancing and things like that. But it really does sound like it's going to be much nearer to what international students undoubtedly want going forward, which we all recognise is a lot more face-to-face learning and more of the campus experience and the ability to network with their fellow students and academics. So I think it's very positive. The thing I would mention is that this year we're expecting a big demand for September, and we also know that many students have been delayed in their applications, and so it might be quite a complicated or challenging process in terms of applications from inquiry to enrolment. We therefore, and of course I would say this, but we would therefore recommend that you use our services to help you from that period from inquiry and choice right through to successful enrolment at the university of your choice.
Thanks, Guy. A lot for us to think about there. Thank you for listening, everyone, and thank you very much for our special guest, Andy Howells, Daniel Cuff, and Dr. Farhang Moradi.
Yes, thank you very much to those three. That really was very insightful and informative. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aki. And remember, hands, face, space.